Hello everybody, I'm Barbara Mitterer from Studi Zitron.
And I'm Maria Kondratieva, known as EMK.
And we were invited to do this talk at Pixel Conference Vienna. We're happy to be here online, so thanks for having us. We both live and work in Vienna. We both work in the fields of illustration, animation, and motion design. And today we're going to talk about what is important to us in our work, in our professional lives. And Maria is going to get started with her talk.
I will talk about my balancing act between commercial pressure and personal passion. And I will also share some personal tips with you.
And then I will proceed and give you some insight into my work. So I'll talk about my approach to storyboard development and about how and why I like to work with characters.
Afterwards, I'll join in and we will talk together about the animation industry in Vienna, how to survive as a self-employed illustrator and animator, and why it is so important to connect to other artists.
Yes, so you enjoy Maria's talk and I'll see you later.
So hello once again. I'm happy and excited to be here, and I'm also happy about the lockdown. So now I don't have to speak live on stage in front of you, since this is my very first conference talk. Today I will talk about one big obstacle I faced as a professional illustrator: the balancing act between commercial pressure and personal passion. So let's get started. I grew up with two creative parents, and drawing has always been a passion in my life. When I was 10, my dream job was to become a drawing artist. But sadly, that didn't turn out because after a tough puberty as a 16-year-old teenager with lots of disagreements with my parents, I didn't care about drawing education at all, and I didn't even have a portfolio back then. Instead, I wanted to be independent and to move out as quickly as possible. But I still wanted to do something creative. So I started an apprenticeship as a graphic designer in a big advertising agency in Vienna. Apprenticeship means Lehrstelle, Lehrling in German. It was a jump in the deep end. Real projects, real clients, and no time to fool around and to explore my own creativity compared to schools and universities. So after my training, I switched to other agencies, I gained new skills, and I had a typical advertising life with lots of extra hours and parties. I loved my job, but I really missed my passion. Drawing was not part of my daily work because as a graphic designer, you have to deal with typography, logo design, layouting, and so on. But in an agency, you book an illustrator. You don't do it yourself. That's why I spent a lot of free time with drawing and illustrating. And I also took some drawing courses at EduSkills and other institutes in Vienna. So after 7 years in different agencies, I got restless. There was a desire to develop myself creatively and to turn my illustration hobby into a profession. So I asked myself if I really wanted to spend my entire life as a graphic designer. The answer was, fuck no! Soon after, I met Martin Michel. His vision of opening a 3D character animation studio with like-minded people really grabbed me. And by the way, back then, I had no fucking idea about 3D or animation at all. But this was a great and promising opportunity for me. So I quit my job at the agency and together with Martin, we founded Pipe Studio, a 3D character-driven animation studio. And at the same time, I started to learn multimedia in an evening college at Spenglergasse. so I could catch up with software such as Maya and After Effects we were using in our studio. In that time, I have learned so many things about animation, 3D, motion graphics, but also how to run a studio. As a co-founder, I did not have much time for drawing at all. I had to deal with client communication, project management, briefing freelancers, helping out in 3D, art direction, editing videos, and so on. And again, we hired illustrators to help us. But deep in my heart, I wanted to draw. So, after 5 years at Pipe Studio, it was time for me to finally follow my passion. I took a break for 3 months to reset my mind and to reboot my energy. Today, 1.5 years later, I am now working as a professional illustrator and designer. Yay! Together with advertising agencies, animation studios, and movie productions, I create vibrant graphics, characters, and scenes. And I have learned that life isn't about going straight from A to Z. There are so many different stops in between, and actually, it doesn't really matter how long it will take you to reach one certain goal. It took me almost 30 years to start my illustration career. But at every single step I took and at every opportunity I was given, I gained experience and growth. Today, that helps me a lot with my own business and also with my illustration skills. So, after 1.5 years as a professional illustrator, I would love to talk about one conclusion I came to. In this period of time, I worked on lots of client projects, of course, with the usual ups and downs. But overall, everything worked out and I managed to survive. And yet, over the past months, I have realized how important it is to work on independent personal projects. And let's remember together that time when drawing was a hobby. Back then, we just drew out of real joy and pleasure. We had the biggest color palette to choose from. We could experiment with different media such as crayons and watercolors. Back then, there was no art director, no deadline, no feedback emails, and the only client we had was our mom, who put every drawing to the fridge. So we had the biggest creative freedom ever. But what actually happened in the past 1.5 years? I became a full-time service provider for illustrations facing art directors, tight deadlines, thousands of feedback emails, and clients. I sacrificed my passion. I sacrificed my hobby. When I draw for commercial projects, I draw with a completely different purpose. I have to fulfill the client's needs, even if I'm not happy with the result. Because at the end of the day, I have to pay my bills. Especially when we are self-employed, we tend to put more effort and more time into commercial jobs. So, one way or another, working on commercial jobs is somehow connected to stress. This year, I was asked to do a commercial job, and of course, I said yes. So, after a couple of months of work, the project was finally finished, the client was happy, and I got my payment. But I've never been so exhausted and frustrated. This job cost me all of my creative energy. For 2 months, I wasn't able to draw anything for myself. This whole situation almost pushed me into a depression. This was really a hard time for me. But fortunately, I pushed myself to some coaching sessions and I began to realize that I cannot just work on commercial jobs. I need to work on my creative stuff too. Because doing creative stuff for ourselves has lots of great benefits. In our daily life, we tend to try to do many things at the same time. So, for me personally, drawing is meditative. I slide into a hypnotized state, into a flow where I'm super focused and present, and everything else disappears. So, after a drawing session, I feel peaceful, balanced, and satisfied. I'm constantly working with digital tools, but from time to time I go back to analog media. It is challenging for sure, and there is no common set, but it can be fun. It pushes me out of my comfort zone, it breaks my daily routine, and it helps me to change my perspective. The big difference between commercial jobs and my personal stuff, I don't have to put myself under pressure, and I don't always have to come up with a masterpiece. It is totally okay just to doodle around, to do some short studies, or even to draw something ugly. And on the other hand, I can also work on my portfolio pieces. For example, I would love to get booked for my vibrant curvy style, but I don't want to get booked for some supermarket graphics, which I used to do years ago. So that's why I try to put more new style projects on my website and get rid of the old ones. I can tell my own stories and I can draw things that are important to me. For example, body positive women and dragons. Many dragons. So doing creative stuff for ourselves is great and we should do it on a regular basis. Either you're an illustrator, an animator, or a 3D sculpting artist, I believe that many of us experience quite the same. As well as all the great commercial jobs, we would love to do more free projects for ourselves. But after a long day of work, we often do not have enough physical and creative energy to get back to our personal passion. But how can I do both? How can I keep my very personal passion between commercial jobs? So, in order not to fall again into a depressive hole and to be creatively exhausted, I figured out a couple of things and I hope you will benefit from them as well. So here are my tips. Number 1, take a break. After long hours working for clients, my creative batteries are drained. So I need to take a break. I go for a walk with my doggo, I do yoga and I take dance classes. In other words, I do other things to reload my creative energy. Number 2, motivate yourself. Sometimes it can be hard to get started. In this case, I try to relax, make myself a nice cup of tea, turn on my favorite music and just start doodling around. As I said before, I don't have to come up with a Michelangelo piece. Other times, it helps me a lot to watch time-lapse drawing videos from other artists. So I can relate to the development process of the drawing and somehow it really gets me into the mood and I want to start drawing right away. Number 3, bye-bye social media. I set my phone to the flight mode and I close every social media tab on my computer. I also got rid of any social media apps on my iPad because it is okay not to have social media on every single electronic device. I try to be focused and I don't let anyone interrupt me. And recently, I started to do this in my working time as well. And I'm way more productive. Number 4, better together. It creates a great dynamic if people are doing the same stuff at the same time with the same purpose. So I meet other artists for drawing sessions. It works both very well, online and in real life. Last year I attended the IFCC conference in Croatia and I met lovely people from other countries. Since then, we have a Discord channel where we hang around, post our work in progress, watch tutorials together and so on. There are lots of different Facebook groups, for example, character design challenges and prompt lists like Inktober, etc. And also here in Vienna, there are lots of live drawing groups. So, doing stuff together motivates and inspires. Number 5, take your time. This is really about time management. We often tend to say, yeah, I would love to do this, but I have got no time. My solution is to set up a schedule. For example, I try to spend a certain amount of time in the morning or on prearranged days. I just make these sessions my routine, and I also set up an appointment in my calendar. So it's easier for me to schedule client jobs and timings. And the last one is especially for freelancers. And actually, it's more than a tip. In the past few months, it has become a main principle for me. The power of no. To pick and choose between jobs might be the main reason why we are working as freelancers. And hopefully, we all have many amazing client projects. But there are also projects that are so-so. Maybe the payment is not the best, or maybe the topic isn't that interesting, or maybe it's a very tight deadline and you have to get it done by yesterday. So, ask yourself, do you really need to take every single commercial job and sacrifice your personal passion instead? Listen to your gut. If you have a bad feeling the project doesn't suit you and you are not dependent on the money, then just say no. You won't regret it because now you have time for your passion. So, at the end, I would love to encourage you to follow your heart and never sacrifice your passion. Thank you. And now, let's get back to Barbara.
Hello again, this is Barbara Mitterer from Studio Zitron back again, and I think I'm just gonna get started by introducing myself. So, this is my studio, Studio Zitron. You can see a selection of my work here. There are TV commercials, online commercials, explainers, music videos. And these are all animation, motion design projects. Illustration is a major aspect of my work, as you can see. And most of these projects are commissioned by ad agencies, advertising agencies, or film productions. But I also do work with clients directly. Then I also often work together with other talented people on a project, like animators or designers or sound designers or copywriters. And Marie and me, we thought it would be interesting to you to tell you as well a little bit of about our backgrounds. So I studied in Upper Austria at the FH Hagenberg. I did my bachelor there and my master's. And it was there that I found out that I wanted to do animation and motion design. I actually remember the After Effects course when I just had the feeling that this could be like a really good tool to express myself. And then during my studies, what was important to me was that I just had the time to work on personal projects and simply advance. To my professional life, at the beginning, I worked in permanent positions in Hamburg at an animation and visual effects studio. Then I worked in a TV station in Vienna, and I got self-employed when I moved to Paris. So this at first was challenging when you arrive in a new city and you don't have the connections. But then, it evolved, and Paris definitely is like an interesting environment to work in, with lots of interesting studios. And I got to work in teams with talented people from more well-known animation schools. And so it worked out pretty fine for me. But what was even more important during this time for me was that, when you start working as a freelancer, you may be offering different styles and different services. And then with time, you just get mostly booked for the things you're good at. So you naturally advance in these fields, and this helps to develop your personal style. So in my experience, this was a pretty natural development. So when I moved back to Vienna, there was again this effort to get connections, get known to studios and agencies, but I still also continued working for French clients. But I already had this clear idea what I wanted to do, what I wanted to continue doing. So this was where I started Studio Citron. Yes. So when I was thinking about this talk, I was thinking about what interests me most in my work. And I was looking at the different projects I work on, and I realized that the ones I enjoy most are the ones where I can take care of the whole project from scratch, work on the concept, the design, the storyboard, the directing, the animation. And often these projects are explainers. So the central task here is you get the content, the information that needs to be turned into an animation. And it's this process of transformation that I enjoy a lot. And then I was thinking about visualization and storytelling in moving image in general, which is, in my opinion, often strongly influenced by traditional live action storytelling, whereas animation and motion design is free of those concepts or limitations, cuts between scenes or realistic representations of actions. So abstraction is a major feature of illustration and animation. And I how efficiently you can communicate information in motion design and animation. So I do use abstraction to a certain degree in my work, but my illustration style is not very abstract, but rather figurative, because I just love characters. So I think I'm just gonna go ahead and show you some. So there are human characters, animal characters, mixed ones. I think why I like working characters is just because the viewer easily identifies with them. So it's easy to communicate emotions and human experience with the help of a character. So when I am developing a storyboard, I try to put the human experience into focus. And this focus is really helpful to me when I'm working on this content, when I try to define what needs to be shown and in which way. So the typical process is I get the content the client wants to communicate, and this comes in a sometimes more, sometimes less elaborate form. And then I work on this content, and I try to define in which order, which info should be shown. I try to find a graphic representation for it. I imagine the way, the animation will look like. So I'm planning the scenes, and I think of a way to sequence them. I try to define the flow and come up with the transitions. And ideally, the end product of this phase is a storyboard and some style frames. And I think I'm just gonna show you some examples from my work. Like, for example, this project is a project for an online marketplace, which I did together with Kaiserschnitt Film Production. The client was introducing a new service that made online payment and delivery possible. So what you're seeing here is the general film, which was meant to explain the process chronologically. But the task general was to communicate, the advantages of this new service for the respective customer groups, buyers and sellers. So then there was like this one film specially intended for the sellers and another one for the buyers. So I figured that it was kind of all about perspective. It was all about user experience. So when I was creating the characters, I chose to represent the main character in a different way than the other characters. So when watching the seller's film, at first glance, you should be able to identify the seller character and take his point of view. So I'm gonna show you like the first scene of the seller film, which communicates just the main advantages for sellers, which is find more buyers all over Austria, regardless of your own location. And I also opened the buyer's film with a similar shot. There you can see the buyer as the main character, discovering more products all over Austria, regardless of his own location. So as you can see, there's this oversized character overlooking the scene. And I think that the size and style also emphasizes, the digital character of this whole process, because most of this service is happening through an app, right? I'm going to show you another scene of the film intended for the sellers. The idea here was to communicate that the buyer is responsible for the delivery cost. Well, naturally, the typographical insert comes in to support the communication. But you see this oversized seller hand, which shifts the package, which symbolizes the cost, over to the seller. And just naturally, there are also other relevant messages communicated, like for you as a seller, organizing delivery is super easy, just like clicking fingers. And the delivery is super fast. The buyer is nearly surprised by the fast delivery, and he has, to look up from his phone, maybe he just finished ordering. This is like what I love about motion design, that you have the possibility to be very clear in your visual storytelling, and it's easy to communicate the essential information. Another example from my work is this project. It's visually quite similar with the blue background, okay? And it is another explainer project. There I was working directly with the client, a laundry service for retirement homes. And I'm gonna show you the first scene. For me, it was important to place the essential information at the beginning, putting the characters into focus. So at first glance, you would see this is about the elderly, this is about old people. It takes place in a nursing home, and then the scene ends with like the message, we take care of your laundry. So this human experience is at the very start, and so I was hoping, the viewer might be intrigued by this to continue watching, because in general, this movie is like a 3-minute movie explaining the process of their service, like in quite a lot of detail, and like, I don't know, that the garments are easily traceable, or who would when pick up the laundry. And basically, I was thinking that regardless, if you continue to watch the movie, you got the basic and most important info in the beginning. So I'm gonna show you another example of this film. And this shot should communicate how every garment is classified for the specific treatment. And, I didn't want to show her discharging a trolley, organizing it into different containers, walking over to washing machine, putting the laundry in and choosing the corresponding program. No needless supplementary information should be shown, in my opinion. So this is what I like about visualizing information in motion design animation. It can be so efficient, So I will show you another example how I like to put a character into the center of attention. This is an older project. It's an oldie but a goldie. I did it for my friends at Paps & Co., which is a French film production. They did this live-action documentary about sustainability in farming, and it was a very personal film addressing farmers directly with lots of very personal interviews. And my task was basically to create the animated infographics, and I decided to create the central farmer character to keep it personal. So I'm gonna show you that character. There he is. I wanted everything to evolve and happen around that character. So he would be basically just standing in the center of the scene, and there would be this linear camera movement with the scenery passing behind him. And I just like this idea of him being transferred into different situations where he would have to react to his surroundings. Like, for example, here I just placed him in the middle of this infographics, which also worked out well and fun, And I'm gonna show you some animated sequences here. This first one is the history of farming. So when humans were hunters and gatherers, their relationship to animals is shown, topic of domestication. You see, they were nomads first, but then they settled down. This is basically, again, the farmer character in a rather prehistoric outfit. And everything is just happening all around him, and he's kind of reacting. Then there is this other sequence about arable land, which shows which landscapes on Earth existed and basically could not be used or could be used for farming. So it's the character being transferred from one territory to another. And it ends in an infographic animation, about, you can see the Earth globe, and then there come infographics coming in later in this sequence. Yeah, and there is this last example I'm going to show you, and I think it shows also how flexible this concept is. Very well known concept of staging, of putting the character into the middle, is. In this sequence, there is the whole family joining the farmer. So the information to communicate here was how a rural society became an urban one, with people working in offices, buying convenience food, and spending their holidays at the sea. So, voila! This was the last project I wanted to show you. I hope you enjoyed this insight into my work, and I hope you as well found interesting what I find interesting in visualizing information. And we're going to have Maria join us again, and we're going to talk about the animation industry in Austria and Vienna.
So now we would love to talk about our personal view on the animation industry in Austria, how we survive as self-employed artists, and why it is so important to connect with other artists. And compared to other countries, Austria's animation industry is quite small. Though in the past few years, there were many great productions going on. And also new studios were created, and talented people started to work as freelancers. Austria's artists won several major international awards, which is super amazing. And in other words, there are jobs in Austria and we can make a living out of it.
Yes, and then also living in Austria doesn't mean you have to work exclusively for Austrian clients. Like, for example, I was living in Paris before, so I stayed in contact with certain French clients I have, and I still continue working for them, like remotely. And I also do have like colleagues from university who have been working in agencies in New York or London, and when they move back to Austria, they just keep working remotely for those companies. So that is also totally a possibility, right? And yes, so when Marianne and me, we were preparing this talk, we were thinking about that there's actually this general trend since several years to illustration. There are lots of illustrated images used in advertising in general, I think. And then most obviously, we all know it, like the technical development has enabled everybody to watch online videos, online movies. Streaming capacities have increased, so there is also this demand for a much more moving image in advertising in general. So this is also, I think, a plus for artists like us, right? And then we were talking also about not only like international advertising, but also local brands and local companies in Austria also do use lots of illustration in their advertising. We were thinking about, I don't know, Falter, for example, or FM4, or I did this project for Willhaben, and the WKO or ÖBB. So all of these companies actually do feel a need for illustration, which is good for us, right?
Yeah. And in my opinion, I think to have an overview over the industry is good. So knowing which projects were created by whom and which agency was involved and who the customer was. And this is not about a bad competition, because maybe you would love to work with the same agency, or maybe you would love to collaborate with the artist and to know more about the process of the project and the making of. So yeah, actually there are many great reasons for staying up to date and knowing your industry colleagues. And I think you will benefit way more from connecting and collaborating than from negative competitions, because we are all sitting in the same boat.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, there was also like, I remember the times when I came back from Paris and started working in Vienna, and it was still, all of this was quite new to me, because before I haven't worked as self-employed in Vienna, so I didn't really have the connections. There's always like this effort of not only getting local clients, but also getting local connections. And yeah, I remember that it's kind of, a natural process. You get to know somebody and a collaboration comes up, then you also might have the need sometime, like to when you develop bigger projects, and you have the need to have other people coming in, joining you in your project, so you will need other freelancers. And I remember that it was like, yeah, all this process of like calling somebody, asking that somebody if he knew other people who would join me in. And yeah, so it's always like a good idea to know local artists, right? Like also us two, right? We met basically through a local meeting.
Yeah.
That you were organizing.
Especially in Vienna, there are lots of great networking events. Two colleagues and I are hosting the Creative Masterminds. This is a networking event for independent creatives, for exchanging ideas, sharing knowledge on specific topics, and just supporting each other. Also, there is a motion meetup for motion designers, SCG meetup for 3D artists, there is an illustration day and regular tables for illustrators and animators. And especially for women, there is a creative network called Illustration Ladies. I prepared a PDF with all my important notes and links, and you can download it on my website. It's ea.mk/pixel.
Yeah, so we hope to see you soon at one of these meetings, soon when the situation has changed and personal meetings will be possible again. And we will see each other again like very soon in the Q&A right afterwards. So stay tuned.